No, John, I'm not eating candy corn today. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do a wrap up of the books that I've read over the last two and a half weeks. And the first book I want to talk about is one I listened to as an audiobook, and it was called Northern Spy by Flynn. This is one of the Reese Witherspoon book club picks, and those picks have been kind of hit or miss for me, and this one for me was a miss. I hate to say it, but the narrator for the audiobook was phenomenal. I loved listening to her accent, and she did a great job. But I really was disappointed in the story. I felt it was a very unrealistic and one-dimensional portrayal of the conflict in Northern Ireland and also the IRA. So the premise of this book is our main character, Tessa. She's a single mom, and she's also a news producer for the BBC. There's a robbery, and she sees her sister participating in this IRA sanctioned robbery. I guess this was billed as a spy thriller because Marion ends up turning over state's evidence, and she starts working for the Crown and working with MI5 to try to infiltrate and disrupt some of the IRA plans. But I really felt this book did a disservice to the situation in Northern Ireland. I feel like it's a more complex situation than was portrayed in this book, and it just felt one-dimensional and inauthentic to the point that I almost didn't finish it, but I did stick with it because I was so far into it at that point. And at this point, I am going to talk about a spoiler, so if you plan on reading this book, go ahead and skip the next minute or so. But in the end of this book, Tessa and her sister Marion are put into witness protection. And you would assume if they are put in witness protection to protect them from the IRA, they would be out of Ireland. Oh no. In this book, they are taken from Belfast to a suburb of Dublin. And for people who have lots of family and people they know, and the one character worked as a BBC producer, so she came in contact with lots of people from different parts of the UK. I think this is utterly ridiculous. Ireland is a small island geographically, so that made no sense to me whatsoever. So I just cannot say I recommend this book for those reasons. The second book I want to talk about is one that I'm reading for a book club at school, and that is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. And this is a young adult fantasy book. We do follow two different perspectives in this book. One is Leia, who is a young girl from the scholar class. She has lost both of her parents, and her brother has been taken as a prisoner by the Empire. We also follow Elias, who is one of the Empire soldiers, and he is also participating in a series of trials to determine who the next emperor will be. The Empire has a long history of oppressing people, particularly the scholars, and we do see rampant slavery in this book, and we do see a good bit of violence, but it's really not over the top, and it's there really to advance the plot. This book really does have an interesting plot, but I would say it was more character driven because in this book you're following the two characters from a first person perspective, and you're really continuing with the book to see what happens to these characters who are very distinct and well thought out. I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but if you are someone who is very into fantasy, I don't know if you would like this book simply because there's not a ton of world building in it. There are some paranormal and magical elements, but they're not really explained in any great detail, and actually some of the main characters aren't even aware or sure of this sort of magic system and paranormal elements that we see. There are a lot of interesting themes in this book as we see Leia trying to free her brother, and she ends up entering into slavery to do that and working with the resistance. So it was pretty fast paced, and it gave me kind of Rome / Star Wars vibes. I don't know. The next book I want to talk about is Hour of the Witch by Chris Bohjalian. And this is the book that I buddy read with Lady Jane Books. I will link a video from her channel in the description box. We did do a 1-hour live discussion about this book, and I had so much fun. Lady Jane is so fun to read with, and this book was an excellent pick. So this is a mixture of historical fiction, mystery, and thriller. It's set in 1660s Boston, and we follow our main character, Mary Deerfield, as she is trying to get a divorce from her abusive husband. This book did a really great job of creating that atmosphere, and as the plot of the story goes on, it feels very claustrophobic. You really feel for the character of Mary. I was actually worried about this character, and there was a really cool element that the author incorporated at the beginning of some of the chapters. He included excerpts from witness testimonies and trial transcripts, and so as you're reading these little excerpts, it does a good job of foreshadowing things to come but not giving you too much. So it really kept you kind of in this book. It's definitely not a fast-paced book. It is a slow burn, but I really felt like it was a realistic historical depiction that handled a lot of very interesting, thought-provoking themes and was very timely without it being forced or manufactured. Our main character, even though she's living in the 1660s, she really felt like a modern woman to me in certain ways, and I really could kind of identify with her a good bit. So I would definitely recommend that book, and check out the live video if you are interested in it. The last book I want to talk about was part of a read-along that I did on Boxer with several other really awesome booktubers, and that is SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome by Mary Beard. And Mary Beard is a very famous classicist from the UK. Mark over at Book Time with Elvis was very familiar with her, and so it was great to get to read with him. But I really enjoyed this book. I feel like Mary does a great job of presenting a non-judgmental view of history. She doesn't glorify the Romans, but she also doesn't vilify them either. The style of writing really felt like I was in a lecture hall and I was listening to one of her lectures. And at certain points in the book, she also offers up some very thought-provoking questions, and she does that to make connections to modern day without really applying kind of our modern standards and sensibilities to ancient people. I think this book is a classic example of just how complex history can be, and how, you know, a lot of times we can get kind of wrapped up in a particular standard view. And with the Romans, they really are kind of a culture of contradictions for me, because on the one hand, they could be brutal, but they could also be very progressive. They were glorious, but they could also be very filthy and barbaric. So this book really gives you all of that, and it really addresses what it is to be Roman. And I was kind of shocked to find out that for a lot of Roman history, even the Romans weren't sure what it meant to be Roman. This book also clarifies kind of that transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, which is always a very difficult topic to really explain, but I feel like Mary does a great job with that. And at certain points, the book was even funny. At one point, there is some bathroom graffiti that is discussed, and I found that particularly enlightening because bathroom graffiti included references to these great philosophers and Greek thinkers, and just to acknowledge that average Romans would even have the intellect and literacy to know these references tells you a bit about Rome. Another fascinating part of this book was the Roman view of slavery. Obviously, slavery was a big part of Rome, but I was shocked to see quite a few slaves were literary advisors, physicians. There were several anecdotes in the book about librarian slaves who pilfered some of their master's books and ran off, and I really enjoyed those. And of course, Roman slavery was not based on race, which I did know that, but I learned something else about the Roman view of race, and that is the absence of references to race. A lot of the sources that Mary Beard uses don't actually include references to someone's race, even when they're discussing Roman rulers in Africa. So historians don't even know the race of some of these people who were prominent and included in the Roman Empire because the Romans never really mentioned them. Now, the Romans did sometimes make fun of people who were considered provincial, but again, no reference to race there. I wouldn't recommend this for just a casual reader unless you are interested in history or interested in Roman history. I wouldn't really suggest you pick this up, but if you are interested in reading nonfiction history, this is a great one, and it was very easy to read. The one part of the book that did bogged me down a little bit was the politics, when it really goes into a lot of that and some of the political intrigue. That was a little bit harder to get through than some of the kind of social history of Rome. So that's what I read this week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. And I hope you guys are having a great day. Have nothing less than a tremendous weekend. Thank you for watching. I hope I'll see you in the next one.